over most of that towards the end of our agenda tonight. But I thought it was a fairly constructive meeting, going over some of our policies and procedures. And I think, the changes that were made were relevant and necessary. So I'll look forward to the next meeting that we have there. And then not really a board committee report, but just thought I would report to the board. Next Monday and Tuesday, we will be constructing the new playground at the elementary school. So there is a sign up that went out, but if anybody has some free time Monday or Tuesday next week, we are more than happy to have them help us put together some playground.
Gary, is that during the day?
Yeah, we're looking at doing 2 shifts, so probably like a 8 to 2 or 3, and then running until 5 or 6 o'clock when we run out of daylight.
Can people get a hold of you if they do want to help out with that, Gary?
Yeah, they can get a hold of me. I know Principal Vaughn sent out to all parents a sign-up genius.
Okay.
I will try to put it on the Cornell PTO Facebook page as well.
Yeah, I know we had a full week of meetings last week, so I appreciate everybody taking time away from their families last week. We were back to back on committee meetings, so appreciate those reports as well. So we'll go ahead and move on to the superintendent's report.
All right, very good. So I have 3 basic topics here. 2 of them are ongoing agenda items. But the first one I think is probably a pretty pertinent conversation right now. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on SIAC. You guys did a really nice job just kind of outlining SIAC. I would absolutely agree with Mike in terms of we would like to hear more representation from differing views. I think the conversation was a very, very good conversation. I do believe that we received a great amount of information that helps either affirm things that we're learning about this process, things that we can do better, things that we can continue to do after this is all over. But again, I think we're still in learning mode here. With that being said, I want to back up a couple of minutes and just, really think about the context of what's happened in the last 2 weeks.
Lower, you guys.
The last 2 weeks have been an interesting roller coaster ride. 2 weeks ago, we were talking about coming back full occupancy, and the board made a very hard decision in staying in hybrid. It was absolutely the right decision in terms of hindsight. When we look at whether we should or shouldn't, and I know we discussed that at length, now we look at the data, and it's very clear that that decision was a great decision. The other thing that's a kudos and a compliment to the board and the work that they're putting in and trying to make solid decisions for our district, for our people. The second thing that I'd like to do before I dive further into the data today is really just thank the staff at Saydel. And I'm talking from, across the board, from right to left, from our custodial staff to our teachers, to our administrators and leaders. We have a solid plan. And the best way that I can explain it is that we have options and pathways. And we didn't realize this until we got, eyeball deep in this, that not every district was carrying out the same types of plans, the synchronous learning that we are committed to, the different levels and tiers in which we have made plans for return to learn. That has given us options that are very significant right at this moment. Some districts chose a hybrid model that looked like either all virtual or on-site. That was their hybrid model, which narrowed their options in situations like the one we're facing right now. We're fortunate to be able to have something in between, which is the hybrid restricted occupancy model. And that model has served us very, very well. And so with that being said, great job, Saydel staff, for the hard work and the effort that you put into planning and carrying out and implementing this solid return to learn plan. It did not come without bumps. It did not come without stressors for everyone and community. We understand that it's a hardship as well. All in the name of safety. So again, we hear you, we understand. We're trying to make great decisions for our students, for our staff, and for community. So with that being said, I wanted to give a COVID-19 return to learn update. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to go ahead and throw up our dashboard. Can everybody see this okay? Julie, can you see this? Perfect. So things are getting pretty inflated in terms of numbers. And so if you go to our website, and I have sent this out on numerous occasions to our public, all of our board and our school staff and leaders all know where this is at and monitor this on a regular basis. We have currently 120 people that are out of school. Either they have active cases, we have 11 active cases across our district, and that's just current. That's not all the past cases added up. That's just current in this cycle. And we have 109 people that are out on either active close contacts or related high-risk symptoms. In other words, they're under quarantine for being in close contacts. I sent out a correspondence on Monday in efforts to just say, talk about, what's happening out there. Most, if not all, of these cases are being traced back to community spread. In other words, they're not being transmitted in the school environment. We know the school is a fairly safe place to be because of all the mitigation efforts that are happening. The problem is now with so many, we're reaching a tipping point where our mitigation efforts may not be as effective due to community spread. And so at a certain point, we are going to lose staff members. We are going to be at risk for being able to pull off business as normal, even under the hybrid model, even with all the mitigation efforts. This is why I made a case to really reach out to community to, number one, help us out in terms of everybody doing their job, taking the right mitigation efforts, the proven mitigation efforts to try to help flatten this out. Because at a certain point, we won't have an option. It'll be, it's to a point where we've hit that tipping point and we'll have to change those mitigation efforts. With that being said, absentee rate right now across our district, and this is all schools, is 7.8%. The state level, it has a line of 10%, but I will tell you that 2 of our 3 schools are over 10% right now. They meet the state requirement. The Iowa COVID positivity rate is 15.1 across the state. Polk County 14-day is 17%. And just to put this in perspective, Governor Reynolds made the proclamation at 15% for a 14-day average in any particular county. So we not only meet the 10% in 2 of our schools and the 15% for the 14-day, so we have both of those criteria met for 2 of our schools already. And then the zip code, and this one's becoming really significant. Our zip code area has a 16% COVID infection rate, and that is going up drastically. The second bit of data that I'm going to show you is just trend lines. And every Friday, and sometimes I do this on Thursday, late in the day, but I try to update it on Friday. But I want to make sure I get this information out as quickly as I can to board. On Friday of last week, we were at 14.3% for Iowa. And what I say, we were 15.1. Think about the increments of growth. We are going up at a faster rate, larger increments, a steeper curve in terms of increases. The 14-day average was 14.3. And I believe I said it was 17%. So just look at the increments in which things are going up, and it's only Monday. The 14-day average on the zip code is now at 16%. We've jumped 2% already, again, just on Monday, and it's just been a few days. And then obviously with our absenteeism rate, you can see the jump there as well. So again, you can see that these trajectories are certainly moving at a very high, rapid pace and on the incline. It gives you an idea, paints a picture of where we are going as a district. Go back to the meeting here. So with that being said, there are quite a few things that I'm certain that the board would like to talk about. Again, the SIAC meeting was fantastic. We learned a lot of really great things that are occurring, but we know that this conversation is still not over in terms of dealing with it, addressing it as a system. One thing I would tell the board, and then I would like to open it up for discussion and answer questions, as well as talk about a few other points. I did meet with our leadership team today in more of a quick impromptu meeting. I called it an emergency meeting, but it really was just to talk about where we are currently. The data over the weekend really spiked again, it ballooned up. I wanted to make sure that we were being flexible, that we were being planful and prepared. So we discussed 5 different points to prepare our systems. 1, decision point. If the board decided that they wanted to make a change, what would be the timeline in which we could make a decision? And just to put this into context, if the board wanted to make a change, we talked about from Wednesday to a Monday, we felt comfortable that we could make that happen in terms of getting things moving to actually implement that in that short of a timeline. We also understand the sooner that we learn about anything that might change, the better for our public. I did commit to communicating as early as possible with our public. And so obviously we'd want to communicate sooner if we could, but knowing I wanted to give you an idea of how long it would take us to turn if a decision was made. We talked about delivery models, talked about what that would look like in terms of a day of learning for students, because we've learned quite a bit since we had school, the voluntary model in May. We certainly have higher accountability. We certainly know and understand how to better utilize our resources, our people. We have a plan to increase our usage of our classified staff and our paras to help provide services. Again, there's a lot of things to be worked out yet, but we're still working toward that. Our platforms, our Zoom platforms, for example, for meetings and learning, we'd like to go ahead and expand on that. We know that we have to do some technology upgrades in terms of making sure we issue computers to all of our classified staff if they're going to take part in supporting learning. In terms of internet access, we have a survey that's coming back out just to check to see where are we with service. Do all of our teachers have service? What about our paras? Do they all have service? And scaling that up in terms of ensuring that they have all the necessary things that they need. The other thing that, and we spent a lot of time talking about this one, by the way, talking about, you know, those Wednesdays, how significant those are to ensure that people have time to record lessons, because the recorded lessons now become even more important in other models other than the hybrid model. So again, we just wanted to wrap through quite a bit of those details around that if a decision is made to change trajectories here. Understanding that teachers' roles and responsibilities in what they're doing and where they might be supporting may change and adjust a little bit. If you remember correctly, we had to be really creative with our staffing. And so we will have to go back a little bit and kind of redefine that. And we certainly want to honor everybody's content area and the work that everybody does. But during, you know, times of crisis or as things escalate, we know that we have to make adjustments to ensure that we pull this off with success. And then flexibility. We know that there are times when we may not be able to offer every single thing like we do on site. And so what will we offer? What will we not offer? Internet, obviously, I've already talked about that, you know. And then lastly, there was a lot of flexibility with our humanistic side of our organization. We understand that families will be burdened, teachers will be burdened in terms of that homework balance. We know that we're going to have to find ways to be creative and offer opportunity for our staff to be flexible, our parents to be flexible, and just our community in general to be flexible. And then lastly, we talked about communications and making sure that we're communicating at the district and the building levels in appropriate ways that sent the right information in a timely manner to ensure that everybody could carry this out with success. So again, we just held that impromptu meeting today just to kind of wrap through those things and to start preparing staff. I know several of the principals are planning to or have already had staff meetings just to kind of begin those conversations, or I guess to continue those conversations from when they were having them early on with their teachers and planning and preparing. Last thing I'll say is I kind of liken this to, you know, when my wife was pregnant and we were at the last 2 weeks, you know, we had to pack a bag, we had to have a plan for what happens if. That's exactly what we're asking people to do. Prepare, build a plan, and be prepared to make an adjustment or head to the hospital in a moment's notice if need be. And so we're asking everybody, from our kids to our parents to our teachers and the school staff, just to prepare accordingly as well. I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to open it up to the board for questions. And I would be glad to answer any questions that you might have right now. I know several of you sent me questions that I, in essence, responded and said, hey, let's talk about that tonight. So I'll stop here and let you start asking.
First, I just wanted to interject. Thank you for putting that impromptu meeting together today to get a game plan on those 5 to 6 points. I appreciate your getting ahead of the 8 ball there to start working through what we can do. So I just wanted to start with that, but I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the other board members so that they can ask.
All right. Thank you, Julie.
Questions and concerns.
Todd, could you, I think you brushed on this, so how long does it take the school district to pivot if we were to go virtual?
Yeah, so that's what I meant when I talked about, look, if the board made a decision on Wednesday, we felt like, yes, it would be tough, but we could pivot for a Monday start in a different model if need be.
And so I think what I'm hearing you say is you would want a weekend. So it's just shy of a week, but we would want a weekend.
That's correct.
Okay. And then I don't think you specifically said how long we would, I know you've sent the communication to tell families, hey, make a backup plan or make a plan, but how long, I've been there trying to figure out daycare and it's not easy. So how long do we think we need to give families to pivot?
Well, first of all, I think the conversation has to evolve before, that pivot would even be considered. And then obviously some decisions would need to be made by the board. But in terms of process, let's just kind of walk through what that would look like. So the state obviously holds most of the power in terms of whether a school or a district can go to a virtual model. And if many of you watched the news tonight, which I did do, there's several schools that are looking at specific schools in their district. Some are actually applying for waivers for the entire district. They're starting to increase tremendously across the state due to different reasons in terms of outbreaks, increasing numbers, staffing, things like that. So the first thing obviously is, where is the conversation evolving to? Is the board leaning toward moving that direction or not, based on some of the information that's presented? And again, I'm not presenting you anything you probably haven't seen already or probably been listening to on the news or hearing about. It does put it into context when we're talking about our own school. But the first thing obviously is, where's that conversation going? Second thing would be, do we want to apply for a waiver with the state or not? Because without that waiver, we are only limited to grade levels, classrooms, up to 50%. And so that would be the next question. It does take about a couple of days, maybe 3 days to get a response. And that's not a guarantee that they'll approve. And so you kind of have to put that into context with, the process and when you would want to pivot or transition. Assuming that you received an approval, obviously then we'd need a board action. And the board action would be to either act on that waiver or to not act on that waiver. The waiver being submitted does not mean you have to act on that. If the number started going down and you felt comfortable, you had the waiver in place if you wanted to use that as a trigger, and if not, you could stay in the current model. Some schools are electing to do that, which is just a strategic move, just to give themselves a little bit more in terms of options and flexibility as a district. Beyond that, then it's just about planning for that pivot. I hope, Jen, I answered your question. I know there was a lot there.
Well, thanks for explaining that. I think it's important for people to understand how that works. And I did actually have a few questions about the waiver, but my question was, how long should we give families if we were to pivot to fully virtual?
Well, it comes down to safety. The idea is that we have the ability to pivot, like I said, Wednesday to Monday. If you ask how long should we, I'm sure you're going to get 10 different answers from 10 different people. Bottom line, it comes down to safety. If it's unsafe to be at school and you determine that as a board, then I think we need to be expeditious about when we do that transition. I don't think there's a good time ever. I think it's going to be hard no matter what, in every way. And again, I understand that last week we sent a correspondence out just saying, hey, prepare a plan. And if you're asking, is that enough time or not? I'm going to say it's never going to be enough time. We could probably all use a little bit more time, but I was serious when I said start thinking about it, because who knows where this is going. The trajectories certainly are not going to a good place.
So, Todd, if we apply for that waiver, you said it takes 2 or 3 days to get a response from the state. Is there a time frame on the waiver? Is there an expiration?
Yep.
A start date and an expiration?
Yep. You have to. So when you look at the waivers, and another board member did ask that I go ahead and look into that. It's in 3 parts. The first part, and some of this will not even make a whole lot of sense, circumstances requiring temporary continuous learning. So they ask you a series of questions based on that part. Temporary permission, in other words, will it be the entire district or only certain buildings? That's why I made it clear that 2 of our buildings are already over 10% and we're already over the 15% in the 14-day. The dates starting and ending, county's positivity rate, absenteeism rate for the school, and then it gives you an opportunity to upload any relevant documents, anything that might be relevant to that decision. The second part is a provision of temporary continuous remote learning. They ask questions around IEPs and FAPE, social emotional learning and health services, 504 plans, meals and nutrition department, how meals will still be distributed, instructional materials and services for people that may not have internet access, which we feel like we've got a pretty good handle on, but we still need to have a plan for that. And then our communication process. I will say that this section will necessitate some collaboration with our district office, and I'm really thinking, our special education director, as well as a few other key people in making sure that we respond to these appropriately. And then a record of application approval, and that's really for the Department of Ed. That's the 3rd section. So that's what the waiver looks like. It's really just a narrative in terms of the situation and then how you're going to deal with, some of those segments of learners.
And then I think she asked, does it expire? So if we
2
were
weeks.
approved,
Yep.
we have a 2-week window.
Yep,
to
it's a 2-week
approve it.
window.
Okay.
You have to have a start date and an end date, and then you have to reapply every 2 weeks if it continues.
Todd, if I may, I want to point out, I know you touched on it briefly, but as we look back at the last time the board made a decision, and I looked at a lot of the communication coming back from the community, especially those who disagreed with what our opinion was and the way we moved forward, a lot of that compared to other school districts around us. And you touched on it a little bit, Todd, and if you can add on to a little bit more, I'd greatly appreciate it. But I feel it is important for our board members, as those while attending, that we are very clear about what's going on around us. Even though that doesn't determine where Saydel needs to go, it definitely gives us an environment. So I'm just going to touch on them real quick, Todd, if you don't mind, and if you can add anything.
Yes, sir.
I think it's very important that we point out this. West Des Moines has a high school that's completely virtual as of right now. They'll be that way for the rest of the week. West Des Moines School Board is supposed to meet tonight as well to consider an option to apply to the state, as we're looking at as an option to extend that beyond just this week alone. Waukee also is submitting, their board is meeting to examine submitting a waiver to the state for at least 2 of their schools to move online. And so they're virtual again, at least until the end of the week. Newton moved to temporary virtual learning beginning on the 6th. And all sponsored activities have been canceled with that district. And the one that was used as most an example for us that we should have gone with a different route was Johnston. And they'll be holding a special meeting tomorrow, I believe, to consider changing their entire model and applying for a waiver as well. And I quote from that district, the building, they're struggling to staff the building because of staff members ill or in quarantine. They're literally looking at a place where they cannot provide staff to educate these children, which is scary. And I'd also like to point out too, that those students that went to Johnston got 2 weeks before they're getting pulled back out. And I've said, and I think a lot of other board members said too, the transition is also very, very key. When we do go back to learning, that it's something, the transition is just as important as how we're educating the kids. A back and forth, sending them to virtual, bringing them back home, going to a hybrid, I don't see any success in that whatsoever. Consistency plays a huge role in education. And so I'd like to point out that although we did make that decision and there was some disagreement, those districts now are going back and looking at either our model or actually going to virtual. And so, Todd, I would agree that we need to maybe focus our decision first on where we sit as a board, maybe before we start working out logistics of how we can do this or the communication piece. And is there any more you can add to that, Todd, at all?
Just a couple of things, Mike, and it's just to add to what you really did a nice job with here. One thing I want to just kind of remind everybody, when I said earlier that our district went about the return to learn planning in a different way, some schools built their hybrid model around you're either choosing to be all on site or virtual. And when I said that it gives us an additional option and pathway by having some intermediate plans for restricted occupancy that didn't look like you were either all on or all off, actually has helped us tremendously. And so that, again, gives us a few more options. Some schools did not plan their hybrids that way, and that has closed doors and created less options for them. And again, I'm not being critical about it. I'm just saying, you know, it doesn't offer them the same types of options that we have. So we're fortunate that way. The second thing that I might say, Mike, is we did get some input. And I'll be exact, I received 11 communications after that meeting. I would say roughly half were communications that either said thank you or what decision was made. And so I responded, obviously, and explained. And the other half were very upset people. But nonetheless, I want to be clear that, you know, exactly how many we received. And I sent everything that I received to you guys. I either quoted it out of an email or gave you a quick synopsis or summary of those communications. Nonetheless, it was 11. I think that was it. You did a great job outlining what other schools are doing. I mean, you've got schools across the state. Anamosa is applying for a waiver and they've got a huge outbreak over there. But I would say our biggest issue right now, I would go back to community spread, and I would go back to adults carrying out the business of school. And I'm talking about our teachers and our paras right now. As soon as that becomes a problem to carry that out, you know, we're just lame ducks. You know, there's no way we're going to be able to carry out services if our teachers are sick or out.
Todd, one other thing that I mentioned it last week or 2 weeks ago in our board meeting, in our workshop, was about hospitalizations and patients in ICU. And those numbers continue to break records, and not good records. And so that's a concern. You know, if we end up having an outbreak and somebody needs to go to the hospital, is there going to be room for them to go? So I think that that's another thing that I just want to put out there for folks that we need to think about.
Jen, I just received a message, a news alert that beds are full. There are no available seat beds in hospitals, at least in the metro area. And I'd have to go a little bit further in that news release, but we're there.
I know Unity Point is, and
Yep.
actually somebody put in the chat that Unity Point is at capacity.
Yep.
So.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see the chat.
No, I don't have
I'd like to add on to that too, and something that I meant, and I apologize for taking up more time. I hope other people pipe in as well. But you know, it's easy for everyone to focus on the education side of it, and unfortunately, we don't have that option. We play a factor in our community. It's more than just the education piece. It's life and death at times for family members of staff, family members of children. We play a critical role in what goes forward and how this spreads within our community. Would I love to just be having a conversation on how this affects mental status of our children or how it affects their education? Absolutely. That's where I'd love to be 110%. Unfortunately, we have to look at the bigger picture of where we're at and how we can be a key part in bringing this to a realistic approach in tackling this thing. And I can't speak that enough. And I'll personally say, my heart sank today just getting ready for this meeting and having this discussion again, because there are people in our community who are making the choice to not follow the guidelines, which then puts the responsibility on us as a school board to decide the safety of our staff and our children, and that's embarrassing. it's heartbreaking to know that we can't come together as a community and make the right decisions for this, and that the burden will be on us no matter which way that we go. But I've asked before, and Todd, I appreciate your communication out to the public as well. We have to do what's being asked for from those in the health industry that can tell us the right way to go. But again, we're not getting that. You can see that in the numbers. And once again, a school board is going to have to take on the burden of the safety and the health of our staff and of our students. So again, what a terrible thing for us to take on, for us to carry. But I appreciate at least the communication within the board. And I hope that we can come to an agreement tonight.
Other questions for me?
This is Gary. Not so much questions, but just real quick, while I was tracking down that Unity Point headline as well, two other bits on, I'll use KCCI's website because that's where I went first. The next two headlines, the second one is Central Iowans struggle to schedule COVID-19 tests because we only have one Test Iowa site. And like I pointed out 2 weeks ago, it's inside our district boundaries. And then the third one down, a Southeast Polk bus driver passed away just a couple of weeks after he was confirmed positive, or I guess they were confirmed positive with COVID-19. So like we were talking about, the adults that carry out the business of doing school, they're not all our employees. Because we contract out our buses, but we bus, the vast majority of our students. So just as we're looking at the community, those are a couple other data points to consider as well.
Other board members' thoughts? Because I've got a couple closing requests from the board here for direction.
This is Doug. I'll just ask a couple of things. Maybe you can't answer, maybe you can. We have said that there are two schools. I think it would probably be helpful for the board to know which two schools in case we went and directed you to, say, partially ask for waivers.
Yep.
In those two schools. I understand the HIPAA laws, and I'm not sure what you're capable of telling us in public.
So Yep, Doug, we had to take off our individual school data due to confidentiality expectations. And so I can share that at a later time, but I will tell you that two of them are, again, ballooning over that 10%, and we can apply for waivers specifically by school if need be. But again, I probably am, restricted to share that information during a public meeting.
Understood. I thought that was going to be your answer, but I just wanted to ask because I didn't think of asking you that earlier today.
I know it seems like a small thing, like it's not that big a deal, but when you can start identifying individuals that might have COVID based on school, it starts to narrow in and it breaks those confidentiality rules.
I work in that business. I take those trainings once a year.
What was your second question?
One of the things that came out of the SIAC for me was I got an interesting discussion from the nutrition side of the house. Is nutrition ready to pivot? They seemed like they openly stated that they're struggling a little bit to keep up on site. Are they ready to pivot? Would they be able to provide meals given a Wednesday to Monday turnaround like you had described? That was my second question.
Sure. So I will let Karen chime in. I thought I saw her on the meeting, but I will tell you that we've had conversation about how we increase our meal opportunities. I believe that was the main part of the conversation at SIAC, was how do we continue to offer more meals, whether it be through delivery, whether it be through increased opportunities for families, alternating times in terms of making it more doable for working parents, things like that. But I will turn it over to Karen if she's on here. Karen, you have a response?
Yes, I am on the meeting. So I, voiced those concerns in the SIAC meeting. And with the survey that I had sent out to families, they did request having a 3-day-a-week drive-through instead of the daily drive-through. So I think that we could easily transition or pivot. I was actually planning to have the 3 days a week start on November 16th, which would be a week from today. So if we did make that pivot, kind of looking at over the weekend, that would lead us right into that time to do 3 days a week. As well as I was on a meeting with my state consultant, and the state is willing to work with us. It's not like we have to submit an application and have that approved before we can move forward. So they just verbalized that they would appreciate if we could, communicate with them, but I think that we could easily pivot. We're already doing the drive-through. So what we would do is we would just expand that further, lengthen the amount of time that our drive-through is open to give parents an opportunity to come. At some point as well, I would like to get the food truck up and running again. And so I would just need to work with the high school on that to make sure that we have, enough staff to run the truck down around to those 4 different areas. And then lastly, I did meet with the social worker, Megan Angotti, and we discussed meal delivery again. So, we would look at seeing if that could be another opportunity for us to meet those families who can't come to us, who can't drive, who, are just lack of transportation. So we would look at doing meal delivery again. The only thing that came up in that discussion is that, last year we used a lot of coaches and teachers. And so that would just be something, we would not want anyone to sign up who does not feel comfortable. So we would just need to reach out to our staff, our coaches, our team, to see who would be willing to help out with that. I know Megan Angotti verbalized that she'd be willing, but that's one person trying to go to how many different locations. So those are just some things we would need to figure out. But in terms of the drive-through, I think we could pivot easily. In terms of meal delivery, I think it may take 1 or 2 weeks in order to do that.
Karen, I'd forgotten to mention this to you, but if things were to go to virtual, we still have Durham busing, and they have offered to volunteer to do those types of things. So that would be another great opportunity. And we do have volunteer organizations that do work with us. And I think you and I talked about one of them that we could certainly utilize as well. So let's keep problem solving on that to see if there's other things that we could do if the need should arise.
Yes, absolutely. And one thing to add, my state consultant said if we use those, outside of our district people, even with, Megan, the social worker, it would just need to take a training on my part to make sure that they're up to speed on, our nutrition guidelines and confidentiality, food safety, those types of things. So that would be a quick training. I could pull those people in, and we could even just do a virtual meeting, and, I could share my screen, watch a video, do trainings that way. So that is something that we can do as well.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Karen.
You're welcome.
I hope that answered your question.
It did. Thank you, Karen.
All right. Other questions from the board or perspectives, comments?
Roland or Chad, do you have anything before I jump in?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Julie, you're really hard to hear. Roland, she's asking if you want to speak up.
Oh, no, no, I'm good. I didn't hear that. Sorry.
I think it's unfathomable to think of, where we were a couple of weeks ago on the cusp of thinking we were maybe thinking about bringing kids back to now thinking about going the complete opposite direction. Again, no matter what we do, hardest decision any of us have had to make. It's hard. It's a hard place for everyone to be in right now. So I just really ask our public and our community to support each other at this time. If we do have to go virtual, reach out. Can I help you? What can I do to take a burden off of you? make those community connections to help each other out if we do need to go virtual, so that we can keep families working, potentially, reaching out to watch kids or anything that you can do to help out those that might be struggling, get them in touch with, where food outside of our program is available, mental health services, all of those things. I just kind of want to reiterate all of those things, that we can get you where you need to go if you need some information in that respect. We've got a lot of resources that we can offer. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us to try to do what we can for all the families. That's just really what I really want to say is, don't be afraid to ask for help, because we are here to help you no matter what, and to do whatever we can, not only to educate your kids, but to make sure that they're fed and that they're safe. So please reach out to us, no matter what our decision might be in the next couple of days to the next week, depending on where things go. Just listening to everyone tonight, I haven't gathered a sense of, hey, Todd, let's go ahead and put in that petition for the waiver today. That's kind of what I'm not hearing that exactly, I don't think. So let me know if I'm misunderstanding what each of you have interjected. But more so, let's maybe see what plays out in the next couple of days. I just want to make sure that Todd knows where we all stand with that, that we want to keep on top of it, though, that if we do decide, today's Monday, and on Wednesday, if our numbers look worse than they are today, that we could convene it. We have to have, what is our window that we have to post? 24
If it's a special for emergency reasons, you can have less than 24 hours. But yeah, what I would need from you is, if things were to change drastically, or the conversation is evolving to a point where we need to move to a decision prior to our next meeting, then we certainly have the rights to call that on your call whenever you guys decide to do that.
So if we wanted you to apply for a waiver,
Yep.
Do we need a motion and a motion approved, or can we just ask you to do that?
So if you ask me to apply for a waiver, and that's kind of, the conversation tonight is, do you want me to do that or not? We are under no obligation to take action on the waiver. What we are doing is trying to be planful to say, if the situation continues to worsen, like the trajectories are showing, it may give us 2 or 3 days in terms of planning time to be able to communicate, to be able to pivot. If we do not begin that work now, then it's going to just delay that by 2 or 3 more days, which is fine. I just need to know a direction you want to go. If you want to hold off and say, you know what, we're going to wait on that and just monitor it, that's completely fine. I just want to make sure we're being planful on our end, so that when the board decides we'd like to make a pivot to something else, that we're ready to go.
Okay, I first wanted to make sure we did not need a motion to ask for you to do that. Okay, and then second, I wanted to go back to when you said that the state holds the power over the virtual part, and then without the waiver, what exactly are we limited to?
So we can go ahead and close classrooms, grade levels, and up to 50% of buildings. And I thought it was more than that. I thought it was quite a bit more, but in actuality, you still have to have at least 50% occupancy of the students who are choosing that model. Obviously not for the virtual students.
Okay.
So again, it does come down to statistics and numbers when applying.
And I'm just kind of going back to Doug's question about, doing a partial waiver for a school. So we couldn't say, if we decided the high school is where we need to focus, we couldn't take that completely virtual. The most we could do in that building is go 50% virtual. Is that?
So if it meets the requirements, and so it has to meet the 15% and or not both necessarily, if other contexts or other variables come into play, the 10% absenteeism rate.
Okay.
If a building meets one or both and then has other contexts, then the state will make a decision to approve or deny that particular building. So we can apply by building or by district. And then we can always resubmit for other buildings if other buildings begin to grow in numbers.
All right, so I'm going to ask for each of you to kind of chime in just after you've heard that a little bit more, that we know we do not have to have a motion in place for him to apply for the virtual. Can I just get a little bit of feedback? Do we want to move in that direction so that we're prepared if we need to use it?
Knowing that
This
you'll
is Chad.
have action to
And
take
knowing
later.
that we'll have to do an action to actually do it, but
Yes,
at least
yes.
to get the ball rolling. Chad, go ahead.
I mean, I think with all the positive cases going up like they are in the area and in this, even in our schools, I think we need to get the ball rolling with the waiver, is my opinion.
On just the schools that meet the criteria or district?
Well, that's a tough one, but I mean, honestly, I think this week's going to tell us the way it plays out, but I think we need to do it district wide myself.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm gonna jump in there and say that I agree with Chad.
I have a quick question. If we say we want to go district, but then choose to only close move back 2 of the 3 schools, that's an option for us.
What I would probably do here, Doug, as opposed to applying for the entire district, I'd probably put in 3 different waivers. And that way, if one was denied or if we wanted to choose selectively by building, we could take action accordingly. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
That would just give us more choices.
Todd,
Okay.
I like that idea, and I think it gives us a little bit more flexibility.
So Doug, is that a yes or a?
Here's what's weighing on my mind on this, and then I'll give you my answer. The staff is requesting a decision on a Wednesday to be able to be available on a Monday. If we have to back up 2 days from that to request of the state's permission to do that, now we're sitting at a Monday. I was leaning towards not submitting yet, but given that we have to have that 2 days, we anticipate 2 days from the state before we're allowed. I now look at asking you tonight to go ahead and do that request for all 3 individually.
Thank you, Doug.
This is Mike. I would completely agree that we need to go ahead and get the ball rolling. One thing that I want to emphasize, and I think we can all agree on this, is that we want our kids back in school 100%. That's where my heart and my mind is 100%. Do I think we're ready for that right now? No. What's a good medium ground? And that's hybrid, which I would love for our kids to be able to at least stay in that at this point. I would ask that Todd does put in that waiver request for us to have it available to us. I would also request that we start having at least a once a week meeting, whether it be 15 minutes. As these numbers increase, we need to be a little bit more attentive as well. And I think our community deserves that as well, that we're watching much more closely, and we can make a week by week decision on how we go forward on this. But I agree at this point. I would like to say that I have faith in our community to get the numbers down. I'd like to stay hybrid at this time and get that waiver put in just in case we need to.
Thank you, Mike.
This is Gary. I feel much more comfortable with the 3 separate waivers than just one big waiver for the district. Like you said, I like the idea of the flexibility. I also agree with Mike. I think that, a hybrid is kind of that good middle ground that we're at now. Like has been mentioned, the way that, the awesome work that the district prepared over the summer, kind of getting ready for it, gives us a little bit more flexibility than maybe some other places have. So while I'd like to have the waiver kind of in our back pocket in case things do keep exploding the way that they are, I'd be interested to see kind of what we can do up to that waiver limit, see if we can get away with not using it. But I do like having it just in case we do need it.
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, this is Roland. I agree. Let's have the waiver just in case we do need it and these numbers don't go down. And hopefully our community will take heed and quit public gatherings and wear masks when they need to.
Julie, are you on board too?
Yep, I am on board as well. I just wanted to make sure we all understood what
Okay.
it meant and
All right.
and what capacity we had right now and what that would do for us and
All right.
how we have to vote, et cetera.
Okay.
Okay. And
This is Gary one more time, just before we move off of this topic. I do want to give a shout out to whoever makes our dashboard. I've looked around at other places trying to kind of see what other districts are doing. I love the dashboard that we have. It is super easy to read. It is very convenient. Whoever is in charge of it, whoever developed it, I want to give a good shout out to them.
I'll pass that along, Gary. Thank you.
is that you?
I'll pass it along. No, it's a group effort, collaborative effort.
Group effort, but I know Tom's behind it, so.
No, it's a team here.
He's
So
looking at a lot of data for us, so he's.
So I have my marching orders. Thank you, everybody. And I just want to reiterate to our public, no decision has been made. I mean, the idea is that we just want to be planful here. If numbers continue on the trajectory that they're on, we certainly want to have decision-making power and ability to be flexible and adjust if need be and pivot, I think maybe is the best word that I've heard tonight on that topic. So go ahead.
And I was just gonna say, our goal is not to be a yo-yo, to say
Yeah.
we're gonna do this and then we're gonna go back and then we're gonna do this. So any decision we make is gonna be very thorough and thoughtful because we don't wanna do that technically. So okay, let's try this for a week and then we're jumping back to this. So, and again, try to reach out and support each other through this time, but also, heed exactly what Roland said, do your best when you're out and about as well to try to control the spread.
Julie and Todd, can we make a commitment on that meeting? Is that something that the board is interested in or logistically that we could make happen? Just to stay a little bit more. I know, Todd, you do a great job sending those numbers out to us. And I know I look at the dashboard every single day, but again, more focusing on the conversation of where we want to be.
You're talking about the weekly meetings at this point, Mike?
Yes, sir.
I'm completely on board with it. However, that's your decision to make. What I would likely do is turn that over to Beth and Julie to work out with the team and to find an amenable time if the group is indeed desiring to do that. But I'm fine with it. I'll meet whenever you guys decide you'd like to meet. Update you if you want to have a singular topic, which could be this one, like you said, and just stay on top of this. I'd be glad to do that as well.
Julie, if you'd like to check with the board, I think it would be important for us at least through the holidays at least, and as we get closer, because as far as I'm understanding, we still have that January date set in mind for return to learn.
Yep.
Full in person, with that being our community and the board's goal. I think it's very important that we just keep that communication. So Julie, I would ask that we as a board take a look at that.
Yeah, so Beth will send an email out to all the board members to see what works best, if it's over lunchtime,
Yep.
On the weeks that we don't have a regular meeting scheduled, et cetera, so that then she knows when to post it as well, because she'll need to post that with the 72 or 24-hour notice.
You could put them on the calendar now if you
Okay.
wanted to, as long as we knew
All right.
24-hour notice.
Yep, 24-hour notice is what we need to
To
do
meet
for
open-
public.
yeah,
I
meeting
just want to
laws.
make sure we stay within the limits of the law for how much notice there has to be for a meeting. But she will send out kind of a survey to board members to see what'll work. Maybe we can do Mondays at lunch or something, or whatever. We'll figure something out. We'll get that going, Mike. Thank you.
All right. Anything else before I move on to student representative report? All right, Jake, you're up.
As we enter the final 2 months of the semester, students are becoming busy once again. Football ended their season 4-5 after beating Clark in the first round of the playoffs and losing to PCM in the second. Now that the break between fall and winter activities has ended, winter sports are in full swing. Middle school wrestling and girls basketball have both started practicing and have their first games this week. High school girls basketball started practice today, and boys basketball and wrestling start next week. In the music department, students are preparing for their winter concert that will be held on December 13th in the South Gym. Choir students Gavin Godwin and Paige Pinniger were selected for the Iowa Allstate Choir. This is the highest choral honor a student in the state of Iowa can receive. Congratulations to these two. The high school drama department held its fall production last week and presented 2 one-act plays that they have prepared over the last month. National Honor Society is holding a towel drive for the ARL, and the junior class held a can drive on Saturday to raise money for after prom. The eSports Club at the high school will be hosting its first tournament next week. Students are also continuing to be recognized as Students of the Month in their classes. As we finish out the semester, students' lives will only be getting busier as we approach the new year. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Any questions for Jake?
Can I go back to, so if we do, I just totally want to go back to this applying for the virtual.
Oh, sure.
What happens from a perspective of our sports, given that we are just ramping up with basketball?
Good question.
We better get that
Yeah,
going
we
too.
didn't address that.
Yeah.
So if schools go virtual, then all activities in terms of participation cease. Now, they still allow you to participate via virtually, and there's lots of creative things that schools are doing around that, particularly for clubs and extracurriculars. But nonetheless, they will not be allowed to compete in terms of games, in terms of wrestling meets, things like that. Sorry about that. I should have mentioned that.
No,
That was.
You're fine. As soon as you started talking about what's going to happen in the next few weeks, I got to thinking, what's that going to do if we do go virtual? So I thought we better get that out there.
I'm glad you backed up on that one. Any other questions for Jake's or based on his report? All right. Hearing none, we're going to go ahead and move on to the principals' reports. And so, principals, why don't we start with Mr. Vaughn today?
Hey, good evening, you guys. I'm going to keep mine short tonight, but overall, I just want to send out a public thank you to our entire staff at Cornell. I will try to do that every opportunity that I get. Our staff continues to do an amazing job of first making the choices as what I believe to be essential employees through this crisis to keep themselves safe, and in return, enabling them to get to work to educate our kids every single day. And so many of them are making sacrifices of putting aside social gatherings, potentially visiting with families because they know the importance that they play in the role of educating so many kids. So I get pretty emotional about that. I can't thank them enough for all that they're doing. Our system is working, and it's because of the hard work, effort, commitment, and love for kids that they're putting in every day. And so that's my first thank you tonight. I also want to thank our community. They have done an amazing job of supporting our staff as well, and putting their opinions aside, and they know that our teachers and our staff again love their kids and will do anything for them. Overall, we are right now kind of getting into the observation cycles of our teachers, and we're doing that with grace and respect for them, knowing that this is not a normal year. Providing great feedback, and so far our meetings through observation cycle have gone really, really well, and I expect those to maintain over the course of the year. And then we're going to start working on those IGP goals. So for those of you that may not know, it's just that individual growth plan. What do our teachers see that they want to work on within their classrooms that's related to our school goal? And I'll be sharing our school goal here in the coming month with you to let you know exactly what that looks and sounds like. So that's all that I have for you tonight. Do you have any specific questions for me?
All right.
Mr. Vaughn, I do have one real quick, but I'll ask all three, just like I did the last time. How are you looking number-wise as far as those students that basically had no contact? How are you looking number-wise on those on a re-engagement?
Thanks, Mike. You know what? We really are closing the gap on that. I'd say we're down to maybe 2 or 3. We've been in great contact with our families. We're making the necessary arrangements through some of the work that we've done. I would also say thanks to Megan and Gotti and Sam for the work that they're doing as social workers. But I think we're pretty doggone close to having people where we need them. It's not a perfect system, but we've made some switches since we've last talked, and I think we're in a much better place. Thanks for asking.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions for Mr. Vaughn? All right. Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. Why don't we move on to the middle school? Pat Ryle.
All right. Good evening. Thanks, Brian, for keeping it short. You must have read my doc, what I was going to talk about. And that's, I want to echo kind of a little bit what Brian said. Our staff is, you know, taking a lot of punches, and they're working their butt off and doing a great job every day. And I think what this time has really taught us is that they're developing those positive relationships with those kids. It may be a slow process because they don't necessarily see them in person every day, but they're still working on it. And I mean all staff, from custodial staff, kitchen staff, our paras, and teachers. They're really trying to during this time really develop those positive relationships and get to know those kids. So I'd like to say huge shout out to our staff at Woodside. I have this down as well about our nurses, especially right now with a little bit of spike. I got to give Mackenzie Osborne and Gloria Gordon a huge shout out, and along with the other nurses. I know they work pretty collaboratively together to contact families, remember quarantine dates, exactly, and explain to parents exactly what's going on. All with that, they're preparing their immunization audit for the year. So a huge thank you to those ladies. Mikey asked the question. We had, if you remember correctly, we had 7 last time. We're down to 3 that are habitually not in school or not online with us. And we have moved a step closer. I mean, we've done home visits, like Brian said, you know, with our social workers going out, counselors going out, myself. We're down to 3, and we're kind of taking that a little bit step further to figure out some truancy options and see what we can do to actually get the parents at the table so we can help these kids. If anybody have any, that's all I have. If anybody has any questions for me.
All right. Thank you, Pat. And Kevin, you get to go last today.
You bet. So a few things, I'll keep it short as well. Echo a lot of things that Brian and Pat mentioned in terms of the high school staff working extremely hard. One of the things I do want to highlight is the work that they're doing on Wednesdays, doing an outstanding job of putting that time to good use for planning, but then also serving students during that time. So we've even had some students who have come into the building on Wednesdays to get support because they need a little extra in order to be successful. So our staff are going above and beyond to ensure student success. As Pat mentioned, the nurses. So I want to give you just a couple examples here. So our high school nurse, Alicia Corbett, spent all day 2 Mondays ago contact tracing. Did an outstanding job crossing her T's, dotting her I's. Gloria Gordon was subbing this past Friday. She was one of the last ones out of our building on Friday. And then on Sunday, I was exchanging phone calls and text messages with Alicia Corbett as well as we continue to talk through this. So I think that for our nurses to keep in mind that not only are they working during the day, but there's also contact that's happening outside of the school day to ensure that our school buildings are safe. So they're doing an outstanding job. From a high school perspective, we are just wrapping up writing our school goals, well behind schedule on that. It's normally done during the summer. but making some of the same transition that's happening at the other two buildings, transitioning into our individual growth plans for our teachers here hopefully shortly. And then the final thing, not only do I mention our staff, I do want to mention the students at the high school have also been in the building, that they continue to be rock stars and meet expectations, not only expectations with mask wearing, but a lot of the expectations with academics and the things that we're wanting and working with them to do. Being able to have conversations with students about how things are going, while they not necessarily like the hybrid model, a number of students, actually I'd say most of the students are getting into that routine. One other thing that's going on, so we take a look at college career readiness. So on the career readiness end of things, our skilled trades pre-apprenticeships, students started in those job shadows last week. Also, our intro to education students, they have also started in with their partnership with mentor teachers. So career and college readiness, that's exactly what we're all about. Questions? What questions can I field? Oh, I'll actually field one before Michael actually poses it. Sorry, I forgot to answer that one. So Mike, the number of students that we haven't been able to connect with, we have approximately 3, and I say approximately because 3 is the number of students that we haven't actually been able to get in contact with. On the list of students that are virtual learners, I have a list of about 25 students who they and their families have chosen to go virtual, and it is not working well for them at all. And so those are students that I have plans to reach out. Those are students and families I have plans to reach out to again and figure out, one, we either need to get them back in school if medically they can, and then 2, making sure that, or if there are other supports that we can provide.
Thank you, Kevin. Any other questions for Mr. Schulte?
Can I go ahead and I see there's a question in the chat.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
The question about GPA, I do not have any definitive answers with GPA. I would say my initial, based on like looking at the students who aren't doing well on a weekly basis and how that's compared in the past, I would, my gut tells me it's actually better because of the steps that we've taken this year to allow students to focus more on fewer number of classes because we knew we were going to be in this model. Now that's just a gut feeling right at the moment. That's not, there's no data that supports that. And then teachers not helping kids while doing online. I see a question about that. If that is something that's coming up, please encourage, let me know, because every bit of, every sense that I get is that teachers have been working to help students both in the classroom and ones that are online. I've been in a number of classrooms where the teacher has been fielding questions from students that come into class. Then also, I mean, one of the things that I've also got actually lots of reports from parents on is the fact that they recognize that if a student emails a teacher, they're not going to get that immediate response from the email, but teachers have been doing a good job of getting back to students when their time allows. So the thing that I would share is if there are concerns out there, please, please, please come talk with me, because I have a 100% confidence that if there's a concern that we're aware of, teachers will do everything they can to ensure that we're getting students the help they need.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Schulte. All right. That's all I have for you.
Okay. Thanks, Todd, and thanks everybody who interjected there. Appreciate the reports from the principals. And now we're going to move on to fall activities and community education report with Levi.
Levi, you ready?
Sorry, I was on mute. Now I'm ready to go.
Whenever you're ready, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We'll just kind of go through this. I'll try to go through it fairly quick. So our fall activities are wrapping up right now. As we start moving into the winter, a little bit of a recap of what of our celebrations, things that happened this fall, and our teams and kids and individuals are proud of. Our marching band did have a very altered schedule this year because of so many competitions being canceled. One of the few competitions they did get to participate in, they actually performed very, very well. They were first place in the Class 3A division at the Fort Dodge competition. And then because of that altered schedule, they had a successful and something that I thought was very, very a neat experience where it was held in our stadium, but they hosted a successful community band night, which it was kind of neat. All the focus was on the performance. You know, usually when they're performing at home, there's other events going on those Friday nights. So it was neat to have an event where it was the marching band performance was the sole entertainment or the sole purpose and event. So marching band was a success. Choir had a big success with 2 Allstate selections, which again, we mentioned them earlier, but Gavin and Paige being selected to Allstate Choir is quite the accomplishment as well. For cross country, they actually had a season that was not altered a whole lot. They actually got the vast majority of their season in. Coach Gebhardt did a great job keeping track and updating Twitter about all the personal records that the kids were setting. They had a successful season, and their team did remain 100% academically eligible throughout the course of the season, which is an accomplishment and something that I know that they were proud of. Their success in the classroom. Volleyball, their schedule is largely affected by COVID. Loss of teams and tournaments greatly changed their season and their schedule. They started the season with a couple wins and really had the kids excited about the season. Obviously, their season got very, very difficult with their schedule as it went. And then I did hear several instances during the season from visiting teams, visiting coaches, that this was actually one of the most improved Saydel volleyball teams that they've seen in recent years. And then for football, had a 2+ year losing streak come to an end. They beat Perry in week 2. And then went on to have a 4-5 season, which again was an accomplishment. Everybody this year made the playoffs for the Iowa High School Athletic Association playoffs, and they found a way to beat Clark. So they won the first playoff game. And then another individual highlight from this year that kind of stands out was Judd Roberts being named the Des Moines Registered Athlete of the Week. Back in week number 2, I believe it was as well. So plenty of individual successes, and that was kind of our fall season in a nutshell. And then some of the things I wanted to talk about tonight and make some of these numbers available was our participation numbers. First, for our fine arts. This is, again, a work in progress, a spreadsheet to keep what our participation numbers have been all the way back to 2010. Marching band had 65 members this year. Some of those were 8th graders that are pulled up to participate with the high school marching band. So 65 members strong was one of their larger teams in recent years, I guess. Vocal, between the two, groups, the concert, and then also a cappella, the vocal fusion group. I have talked with Mr. Puffett. The vocal fusion group is a little bit lower this year, just simply because of scheduling conflicts with the block scheduling. The participation numbers for vocal fusion is a little bit maybe skewed a little lower this year just because of the circumstances. And then I did add this year for our participation, I'm going to break it up a little bit more into hopefully a play and then hopefully a musical being offered yearly as well. But our play participation was a little low this year. I went to the play the other night though, and those kids did a great job, even with some of their cast members being quarantined, and really did put on a good show, you know, and really met the adversity of like having to read from, or having a few actors or actresses having to read from a script to fill those spots. But it was really entertaining, really funny. And we do have some really, really talented kids in the fine arts areas too. And then the same spreadsheets with our athletics participation. So high school wise, those numbers are listed there at the top. If our program has a 9th grade team, I entered those in as well. But again, so the high school numbers, for example, for volleyball would be just 10, 11, 12. And then our 9th grade team, which is separate, had 12 members as well. So a total of, 9 through 12 participants, they had 32. But your totals are down there at the bottom as well. So football with 84 total participants, 7 through 12, volleyball 71, and then cross country's total participants this year was 26. Again, kind of on par with a lot of years, maybe up compared to a few. Again, the goal is obviously to see those numbers continue to grow. And there's a number of ways that we can work to see that. So to wrap that up, again, we want to see the numbers trending up. We also have to consider, when you start looking at those numbers, you have to consider enrollment in certain grade levels as well. So some of the years like 2015, 2016, I know some of those numbers were really, really high. Some of the grade levels of enrollment may be higher as well. If you have a large, 125 person 7th grade class, participation numbers are sometimes skewed when you look at the actual enrollment of those grades or of those classes as they move through 7 through 12 through the programs. But we want to see those numbers going up. And then the club participation, I'm going to continue to collect that data as well. As we start getting our clubs kind of rolling. They have been kind of slow to get off the ground this year just because not all the kids are in school. So I anticipate for the winter report, I'll have solid numbers of who all is participating in all the clubs as they kind of get going and have gotten going with the beginning of the school year. So we'll take a look at those come the winter for participation as well. A little bit about budget. I just kind of wanted to give a snapshot. So our Fund 21, that is our activity budgets. Again, there's a lot more that goes into it than just these data points, but these were just ones that I wanted to make everybody aware of what our revenues are, what are our revenue streams when it comes to our fine arts and Fund 21 budgets or our activities expenses. So when this was posted, we haven't had the fall play yet. So obviously ticket sales generate revenue for that fund. Our major expense at this time for the fine arts is the high school drama supply. So that's the scripts, that's the rights to the performances, props, that sort of stuff, all fall under that expenses for the fine arts. And again, that's from July till now. And then a little bit, again, just a snapshot. There's a lot more details, but just to kind of give you an idea of what generates revenue for that, for our activity fund. when it comes to athletics. Our gate at our hosted events are a big driver of revenues. They're down a little bit this year. The state associations, I should say the Iowa High School Athletic Association did reduce one home football game. So that is a little bit lower than what it is on a usual year where you host 4 games. Revenues, mainly our gates, and then we do partner with Varsity Group for some advertising that you'll see out of the stadium, on the head table in the basketball table in the gym. So that's another revenue stream that we do have to kind of look at, evaluate, see what is of best interest for Saydel, to kind of maximize that revenue stream for advertising when we start utilizing video boards, billboards, and other sponsorships. Expenses are, largely our expense is going to be officials and actually operating and running events. So officials pay, general equipment, that may be requests from coaches, that may be necessary equipment. At this time, again, this was starting in July. And that number fluctuates a lot. When we put in our request to have helmets reconditioned, which has to be done every year, those numbers are going to balloon as we go as well. There's going to be equipment needs that come up. Anytime we host something, again, another expense, for example, is the cross-country timing that we outsource for that. And then security at games too. So again, just the costs of running our events kind of gives you an idea of what it takes, what we bring in, and then what it takes to run those events too. Any questions, participation wise or budget report wise? Again, just a snapshot, nothing extremely detailed there. Okay.
Levi, I know at I think it was at our workshop, the Heart of Iowa conference, you were going to meet about upping the gate fees. Did that pass at that meeting?
Yeah. So it starts as a recommendation from the athletic directors, and then the actual implementation vote comes from superintendents, which are recommended by the boards. But when we, from 7, out of the 7 member schools, 5 were in favor of even in that ticket price to $5 for students and keeping the adult price at $5 as well. So again, it goes to the principals to be discussed, and I believe they already have had their meeting about it. But it will be put into the bylaws going forward for the winter season, once it's approved by the principals and then by the school, or then it goes to the school board to be implemented as well. So I'll be coming back with that as well for a final vote, an actual action item to be approved if we go with 5 and 5. But the conference has agreed with that from the activity director standpoint, 5-2.
Okay, thank you.
That makes sense. Sorry.
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Okay. And then the last thing I'm going to kind of add to this as well that I'll touch on and share as much data about it as I can each season is our sportsmanship ratings as well. I think this is a key part of our activity department is we are wanting to instill and teach good sportsmanship to our kids, from our community, from our parents, our spectators, and make sure it's also coming from our coaches as well. So to kind of break these numbers down, the Iowa High School Athletic Association, the Boys Association does collect sportsmanship ratings. The scale is up there in the top right-hand corner. Anything in the 1 and 2s, that's excellent to acceptable. And these ratings are given by officials when they come and officiate our games or our events. So this was for the football season that's just finished, so the 2020 football season. And then you have the Class 2A average, along with the state average in the second and third columns. And these were where the first column was where our rankings fell at. So 1.83 for athletes and coaches, student spectators 1.64, and then the adult spectators 1.97. Again, all following inside the acceptable range. But again, I think there's room for growth there, and that's going to be a goal action item for us going forward as well, is to try to instill that mentality and that mindset, that the way we behave at games or our reaction. You know, everybody has that initial reaction when there's a questionable call or a close call or a call that doesn't go your way, and that's natural. But just like we teach the kids, you know, we got to rebound. You know, we've got to get back in the game and get focused and not let it affect us going forward. And that's something that we really need to instill in order to improve those sportsmanship ratings. So that's where we are right now. Any questions about sportsmanship in the ratings that the state puts out?
Levi, just a quick question. When the referees give that feedback, are they allowed to give any details about their feedback, maybe for suggestions on how to improve and or to help you understand ways that we might be able to make an impact to improve ratings?
Yeah, so it's not as detailed as maybe what I would like to see, but they do have probably 10, you know, so when they rank the coaches, there's probably 10 subcategories that they put a ranking into. Either it's on a scale, and that does help us identify, you know, what maybe that, you know, what was of more concern or what was done well. So it does break it down for us. I just didn't put those numbers in this slide. But yeah, they do have subcategories below these sportsmanship ratings.
Excellent. Thank you.
So again, it wasn't completely discouraging, I don't feel, but it's just an area where I think we're going to spend some more time and focus on, and again, make it an action item.
Okay. Thank you.
So with those three things, our target areas, you know, we want to increase participation in all of our activities. That is not always getting, you know, somebody new out for an activity, but also to try to encourage our, you know, one activity participants to be doing 2 or 3 things. The more involved, the more connected they are to the school, the better. And it shows higher academic performance, a greater connection to the school, and a sense of belonging when we have those kids actively engaged and involved in our extracurriculars. So we want to increase participation in all of our activities, whether that's newcomers or if that may be getting people involved in a fine arts and an athletic, or getting involved in multiple fine arts or multiple athletics, but wanting to increase our participation in activities across the board. We want to provide a first-rate experience for our participants, you know, so that when they're participating at something at Saydel, it's top-notch, just like they would get at any of our neighboring school districts. That's a first-rate experience, something that they can look back and be proud that they were, you know, a marching eagle, or that they were a Saydel volleyball player. Whatever the activity is, making sure that's a first-rate experience for our participants. And then the last target area there is obviously displaying good sportsmanship from our coaches, students, and spectators, and really identifying, you know, what areas do we need to improve upon, and what are our next steps with taking that action to improve, you know, the way we behave or way we interact at our events. So that was largely the fall wrap up and activity directors part of the presentation. I was going to kind of mention some things with community education here too. Just one slide. I wanted to let you know what we're currently offering And then those numbers next to those current offerings, those are the number of participants. So adult Zumbas had two sessions here this fall. Enrollments have been 13 and 11. Flag football was something we put together kind of at warp speed to try to get it in before the weather got too cold. We had 45 participants sign up for it. Overall, it was a great success, and was something that we're going to have to tweak going forward, but it is something that we're going to want to offer our youth in the fall. Going forward, it may look different going next year, and hopefully we'll be able to begin it earlier and be ahead of the game. But it was a success this fall. And then the I-80-35 basketball league signups are underway. That number I think is up to actually 56 today. And then youth wrestling was at 42. Both of those offerings are getting underway right now as well. And then one I forgot to mention on there was a community on deck volleyball, which is for first through fourth graders. They actually just got underway here today. It was a free offering. As I start to kind of look and assess what our community needs, I think getting our youth exposed to multiple realms or things that maybe they're not usually exposed to is huge, and we don't want to have any barriers. We don't want money or finances to be a barrier to that. So the opportunity on deck volleyball was a free offering for families. They had to cap the registration at 36 just because of the size of the space. But again, wanting to make sure that these offerings are available and accessible to all of our families. And we have some scholarships that we give out for the basketball league as well. So again, just wanting to make sure that everything's available and that we're taking away those barriers or hurdles for people to get involved in. And then my attachments down there are COVID documents that are kind of guiding and protocols and procedures that we're following when we're offering these community ed classes or programming. Again, we don't want to be just throwing the doors open and doing it in an irresponsible way, but we want to be making sure that what we're offering is done in the right way, in a safe way. So these were documents that were shared with program directors, coaches, to make sure that we are able to safely make these offerings available to our community. And then last thing I had with community ed was Nick Noring has been added as the assistant community ed director. He was vital in getting the flag football fall offering off the ground and running, and working with those coaches on scheduling, t-shirt orders, and making sure that final night, the Thursday night under the lights games went off without a hitch. So he may be sharing some of this information with you going forward, but he is the assistant community ed director now for the community education program.
Thank you, Ms. Levi. Board, do you have any questions?
I really just want to say thanks for making it a good fall sports season, given what we were up against. And I thought we had some good numbers of participation, given what we were up against. So I appreciate also adding the sportsmanship numbers. I don't know that we've seen those before. If we have, I've forgotten that we have. So that's a great addition to see how we're doing in that realm. And I'm appreciative that that's going to be part of your target.
Levi, thanks for sharing that information. I was going to say to Julia and some of these other parents too, that maybe we should institute that in Little League as well and see what our fan percentages are, because it doesn't look like it ends just in Little League there too. But yeah, one thing that's really nice is we're able to have a conversation about some great things that are happening in the community and in the district. And Levi, thank you so much for getting that put together. Really exciting to hear that we have some 2 individuals in the choir that got recognized. That's the highest recognition, as well as just the participation in the fine arts, not just focusing just on sports too. Just overall participation is great. So thank you.
Yep, absolutely. The Mr. Puffett's write-up detailing the Allstate choir selections are attached there as well. I'll let Mr. Martin talk about that.
You ready to move on?
Sure, go right ahead, Todd.
So it's been talked about 2 or 3 times already tonight, but we did want to formally just go ahead and recognize, 2 Saydel students, Paige Pinnegar and Gavin Godwin, for being selected at the Iowa All-State Choir. And again, we've already mentioned it 2 or 3 times, but we wanted to formally put it on as an agenda item because it is such an honor, to receive these accolades. And so the attachment that we put in here is just a quick selection here to show, these 2 amazing students. And again, it's just a quick PR, I guess, statement here. Is there anything you guys would like to add? I know many of you are in the music programming.
I was to say, I know it's a rarity to get selected. I feel bad that there isn't going to actually be an all-state choir. Usually it's around Thanksgiving, and I know they
Like the Allstate choir is 600 members, so being selected out of the entire state is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And we also are a part of the hardest district to get out of because we're with all the 4A schools in the metro. So it's a big accomplishment for them.
So very talented students here.
Yes. Awesome. Yeah. If you haven't heard either of them sing, you need to go listen to them. They're both amazing. So.
And if we were here in person, we would have them here and we would be recognizing them and giving them a round of applause. So again, under COVID times, it's just unusual, but we did want to stop and pause and make sure that we recognize them formally.
Absolutely. Great job, kids. All right. So we will go ahead and move on to our consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
This is Gary. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
This is Chad. I'll second.
Discussions, and I was just going to mention too, your assembly may have fallen asleep, so make sure you're ready when we're going to post the vote here. But yeah, let's go ahead and do discussions as well.
It's your re-login warning.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway.
This is Chad. I had the bills. All my questions were answered.
A little bit of fundraising going to go on and some donations. Thanks again to Saydel Church and Grace Church for those. And I believe those contracts, you looked at all of those in our operations committee. Maybe accept that.
The vendor contracts.
Yes. Yep. All right. If there's no other questions, Beth has the vote up. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, and can I get a motion to accept personnel changes?
This is Jen. I'll make a motion to approve the personnel changes.
This is Doug. I'll second.
Discussion?
Nothing real earth-shattering here, just a few adjustments here for new hires and resignations.
All right. And the vote is open. Motion carries 7-0. Now can I get a motion for open enrollment in and out?
This is Jen. I'll make a motion to approve open enrollment as listed.
This is Gary. I'll second.
Discussion?
Obviously, most of these are continuations as we continue to clean up open enrollment.
There's no other discussion. Beth has posted the vote. Okay, motion carries 7-0. Now we're on to vendor contracts.
Vendor contracts,
Correct.
yes.
And can I get a motion to approve Amendment 4 for Estes Construction?
This is Chad. I'll make a motion to approve Amendment 4 to the Professional Services Master Agreement with Estes Construction for 2.75% of 2021 district-wide additions and renovations project construction value.
This is Roland. I'll second.
Discussion?
I do have some discussion on this real quick. Todd, if you can give some clarification, what falls underneath that 1.5 for general requirements? Just a real quick broad answer on that, as well as that construction manager fee.
The general requirements, this is Ryan with Estes. The general requirements are the cost of the project specifically. So these are the superintendent, manpower and trailers and fencing and all of those things that don't fall into individual subcontractors. Does that answer your question?
And then the construction manager fee, what is that?
That's the fee. So that's the profit and overhead for the operation of Estes Construction.
Thank you.
Okay. Beth has posted the vote. Motion carries 7-0. And can I get a motion to approve the final construction document for the 2021 district-wide additions and renovations?
This is Chad. I'll make a motion to approve the completion of the construction documents phase for the 2021 district-wide additions and renovations project as presented by Halen ASP.
This is Roland. I'll second.
Discussion?
Art, do you want to chime in on this one before?
So I take it from the motion to approve that you guys have read through all 2,400 pages of the specifications front to back, as well as all 400 pages of the drawings.
Yeah, we had Roland on that one.
Yeah.
So we are we're in the final approach right now. We still have our design team wrapping up last minute details. We anticipate to continue to work on those small details through the 17th, and then we're on track to send those to the printers at the end of the day on November 17th to bid for December 15th. That's the time schedule that we're looking at right now as a design team. So what you are approving really is the 95% set that we have sent to you, but we are wrapping up that last little bit of design here over the next week.
I know just seeing it at the ops meeting last week, it's putting it all in perspective and getting excited that we will be bidding next month already and to get rolling on it. So I'm anxious to see it all going. So,
yep.
As I know our community is as well.
We brought it up earlier in the meeting. There are a number of alternates that are going to be bid as part of the project, about a half a dozen alternates. These are essentially some budget relief alternates. If prices come in over our anticipated budget on bid day, we have those abilities to peel off scope in the various projects. We would like to have a kind of sit down session with the board sometime in the coming weeks to go over the prioritization of those hypothetical alternates, should we need to peel some of those off, get your sense as a board on what priorities are. I think we have after, working with you guys for a number of years, as well as just lots of discussions with Todd and Patricia and administrators, I think we have a fairly good idea of what the priority is of the board, but we do want to just clarify those here in the coming weeks, so that on bid day, we can look at all the various permutations of alternates and apparent low bidders to arrive at a recommended contract award to the various prime contractors. So stay tuned. We'll have that meeting sometime in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Art. I know you put those out in front of just the three of us that are on that ops committee, and we all felt that it was a seven-member decision rather than just a 3-member decision. So we will probably dig into it at a workshop coming up shortly. So and he did a great job of explaining it all, but we really just wanted to make sure that everybody had their say in it and could speak to what our choices are. So that's why we held off on that, and they're going to put it in a work session.
Julie, just to add to that, that will be a primary focus for November 23rd work session.
Okay.
So Art, if you want to tentatively pencil that in, and we will work together to frame that.
Great, will do.
All right, and I know Beth has the vote up, and I'm probably the only one that hasn't voted yet, so. All right, motion carries 7-0. Okay, and now I need a motion to approve the GO bond official statement.
This Chad, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution directing the advertisement for sale, approving electronic bidding procedures, and approving official statement to issue $10 million general obligation school bonds, Series 2020, for partial funding of the 2021 district-wide additions and renovations project.
This is Roland. I'll second.
Discussion?
Patricia, do you have any words on the formalities of what we're asking from the board in this resolution today?
So this is the information that we are disclosing to potential investors for people who would be giving us the $10 million. And this will be out on the website where the SEC keeps their information. So this is basically our public disclosure of who we are and our financial position as we issue these $10 million of bonds.
I know I read through it briefly, looked it over, replied to Patricia. I wasn't sure, if I was looking in the right spots, but she, told me it's been through our legal team and all that. So I'm comfortable with what it said.
Yeah, we've had several meetings with Piper Sandler and Allers with Beth Grove in just navigating through this work. So honestly, it's extremely detailed. We did have a meeting with our bonding agents just for rating, and that went very, very well as well. So we're in very good shape. We're ready to go here to get this thing kicked off and go out and seek some revenues to get going on our bond referendum projects.
Got the vote up. Motion carries 7-0. We'll move on to SBRC requests. I need a motion to authorize the MSA for increasing enrollment.
This is Jen. I'll make a motion to authorize the district administration to submit a request to the SBRC for the maximum allowed modified supplemental amount. Nothing, $0 for an on-time funding for increasing enrollment.
This is Gary. I'll second.
Discussion?
Yeah, Patricia, I think just maybe a little bit more about why we would submit one for $0.
So this is just like in the spring when we do the budget guarantee resolution, regardless of whether we have a number, just so that we always have it on our agenda when we roll forward to the next year.
I think that's great to point out so that everybody's aware of kind of the reason we do those things.
So Jen, as a practice, it's always wise to annually do these things just in case. Oftentimes you'll see some adjustments being made after or at a later date. And we always want to have approvals taken care of just in case it were to change and that amount goes from 0 to something. And we want to be able to claim that. It's kind of like budget guarantee. You still have to do the approval even if you're not on it, just in case some dynamic changed so that you could still use it if it became applicable.
All right, the motion is carried 7-0. Now I need a motion to authorize the MSA for open enrollment out.
This is Jen. I'll make a motion to authorize the district's administration to submit the request for to the SBRC for maximum allowed supplemental amount of $364,640 for open enrolled out students not included in the district's previous year certified enrollment count.
This is Gary. I'll second.
I find my unmute button. This one is for, as it says, open enrolled out students that weren't on our count last year. So these are students who are new to our certified enrollment this year. This gives us the authority that we'll need in order to actually be able to pay the districts where those students are attending this year.
Motion carries 7-0. And last one on the SBRC, the motion to authorize the MSA for ELL enrollment.
This is Mike. I'll make a motion to authorize the district's administration to submit a request to the SBRC for the maximum allowed modified supplemental amount of $32,783.52 for ELL program for students who have exceeded 5 years of weighted funding.
This is Chad. I'll second.
Discussion?
And this motion just acts kind of like our special ed deficit. We have a program that where we were serving students as required. The cost exceeded the revenues we got for that particular program, and then this is a way for us to recoup that spending authority.
Motion carries 7-0. And now we are going to move on to the ISL public hearing. So I'm going to open that up. It is now 8:02 p.m. and it is time to open the public hearing regarding the instructional support levy for public comment pursuant to the provisions of the Code of Iowa. Are there any residents or taxpayers who would like to speak regarding this topic? There are none present. Did any mention anything in the chat? Okay.
I do not have any comments in the chat.
Okay. Were there any written comments received? No, there were not. Okay. I now declare the time for receiving objections to or arguments in favor of any part of the proposed topic closed at 8:03 p.m. Now I need a motion to approve the ISL renewal.
This is Gary. I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to continue participation in the instructional support program.
This is Jen. I'll second.
Discussion? It just lets us do the taxing that we need to, correct?
That is correct. And so it really is to backfill that curriculum and instructional supply piece that is so important for us to carry out our services.
And Beth has posted the vote. Motion carries 7-0. And now we'll move on to board policies. Can I get a motion to approve Series 600 and waive the second reading?
This is Gary. I'll make a motion to approve the listed changes to Series 600 and waive the second reading.
This is Doug. I'll second.
Discussion?
I would be glad to review any of the policies that we have identified here. Board, would you like to review any of them before we move on to final approval?
And just a lot of clarifications I
Yep.
think went into discussion, and
It was reviewed by the policy committee and brought forth here today.
Are there any highlights, Todd? Any changes or anything? I know a lot of times it's kind of just wording or falling in line with IASB.
Correct. I would say that 70% of the documents were actually just small edit changes. Things like titles have changed over the years, edits in terms of word selections and differences. There were some policy primer adjustments that were also made, and some based on an audit that we had done recently as well. Otherwise, I'm trying to think here, I'm sitting here looking through them. There was a lot of redundancy in probably about 3 or 4 of the different policies. We actually removed that. So again, real simple stuff for the most part.
You.
I'm looking for, Patricia, do you remember the bond, what number that one was? Or was that in the other policy?
That's in the next section.
Okay, I'll wait on that one then.
yeah, just a lot of clarification. Some stuff went into got down to like this red pencil that we decided didn't need to be so detailed. Some things like that maybe have carried over year after year after year. But otherwise, yeah, it was just a lot of cleanup and to make it read a little bit easier.
And this is just part of our cycle of examining our board policies, which we have on a 5-year cycle.
And then we did remove homework as a board policy.
That is a highlight. Gary, thank you. I forgot about that one.
You were supposed to say that, Gary.
Now I'm going to clarify that one though. They still have homework, it's just not a board policy.
Yeah.
We still expect students to do their work and practice.
I said, had I known it was one, it would have been on our refrigerator so everyone in our house could see. Sorry, he's ignoring me, I know. All right, motion carries 7-0. All right, and now I need a motion to approve updates to other policies and to waive the second reading.
This is Gary. I'll make a motion to approve the listed policies and waive the second reading.
And probably I need you to interject an adoption of new policies because there are a couple new ones on there.
So I'll make a motion to approve the updates and adopt the new policies as listed and waive the second reading.
This is Doug. I'll second.
And these I think are where you wanted to.
Yeah, the notables here are pretty straightforward, and Patricia, please feel free to chime in. Upon legal advice from Allers and through our bond referendum work, there was some updating to some of the 700s that you see here. And that really was in alignment to our bond rating to ensure that we were positioned best to receive the best possible bond rating. And it really came down to language adjustments from a legal standpoint to help them feel that we are indeed worthy of those increased or those higher level bond ratings. Patricia, do you have any comments you want to make to those, at least the 700s?
Yep, so that's for the two 704.02 regulations. We've removed a section from regulation 1 and created a whole new regulation on that topic and in regulation 2. For regulation 2 for 708, that actually puts into board policy approval of electronic signatures and electronic records. It's just a policy that kind of, as you transition through time, becomes more applicable. Already under Iowa code, we can do that, but this makes it so that for certain items, we can use those electronic signatures in the future.
In terms of other notables, emergency drills, we had to add bus evacuations. So that would be a simple add to that particular policy. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward in terms of the recommendation.
What did we change on graduation?
The graduation requirements, let me go into that one real quick.
Remember what was different there?
So in the graduation requirements, special education students had to be removed in terms of, you know, how we identified that on a diploma. And so we want to make sure that the requirements were of a similar nature to their colleagues. And then of course, cross references and legals were all in there as well.
So on those additions, those were from, usually we take a draft of IASB or we take their exact wording. Was that the case with those additions?
Yeah, so basically what we received based on legislative changes, based on how things change over time from a legal standpoint, Policy Primer through IASB puts out recommendations. Now, we don't always adopt it exact, but we certainly try to maintain the intent. We want to maintain our local control in terms of how we say that, but the legal side of it, we want to make sure that we capture in our policies. So short answer, yes.
Jen, the language for the 700s actually came from our attorneys. So
that's true, yes.
Yeah.
So if I look at the IASB policy guide, there won't be those in there.
So there is some debt management information in the IASB. This is just the one that matches with the guidance from our attorneys. The regulation for electronic signatures does not exist in IASB, but we adopted that upon recommendation from our attorney.
And have we provided that feedback back to IASB?
I don't believe we have, but we can.
Yeah, we certainly can. Jen, just to kind of put that into context here. So the bonding and lending atmosphere has changed based on recent economic times. I would say over the last 2 years at most. And so things have adjusted. And so our language here based on legal was, it was helpful and it was beneficial to us to make some of these adjustments for our bond rating and for our lending agencies. And so again, it takes a little while for IASB to get up to speed, but we'll certainly provide this information to them, as I'm sure Allers is providing them as well. Other than that, that's pretty much it on those policies.
Another vote is up. Motion carries 7-0. And now I need a motion to adjourn.
This is Jen. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Chad, I'll second.
Hearing none, the vote is up. Motion carries 7-0, and we will adjourn at 8:13.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a great evening, everybody. Thank you for hanging out tonight.